and good afternoon to all of you. How are you? Happy Sunday. Here is your chattering magpie again after so many days apart, here to read to you, read with you. Persuasion by Jane, not Jane Eyre, Jane Austen. How are you, everybody? Happy Sunday. Hope, or for those of you who are already living in the future, hope you had a wonderful weekend and are having a wonderful Monday. So far so good. It's been hot and muggy where I'm at, and so I'm just surviving the summer. I'm not a fan of summer, you guys. I don't do well with the heat. So anything above 78 or anything below 72 and I am miserable. Anyway, you guys, so enough about the weather. I hope you're all fine. Let me just say hello to all of you. I have been reading these amazing puns. You guys are so amazing and imaginative. But let me just say hello to Little Butterfly, who was the very first one in this chat. Says, I may or may not be listening in today. I'm listening live today. I have family time and we are still hanging out. I will not be persuaded away. No worries. I won't take any persuading for me to listen to the replay. Well, thank you for letting us know, Little Butterfly, and happy to see later on that a couple hours later you updated us with your status and said extra persuasion is not necessary. I should be able to join the live read. Yes, happy to see you, and yes indeed, I do see you there. Hello. You know what, you guys, you know what's the sad thing about this? I no longer have the ability to send hearts. I don't know why. My chat is, I don't know why. It's like I used to be able to send you guys hearts and stuff, hugs, like reactions, but I can't anymore. I have to go into emojis and stuff. So this is the best I can do, sending you a heart. So yeah, YouTube sucks in this. I don't know why I can't give you guys reactions. But anyway, to all of you live people who are watching live, sending you all my love, and especially early gang folks. Also, we had Crusher, who seems to really like the word persuasion. He definitely wanted to make sure that nobody else needed to say persuasion anymore. What's up, Crusher? You can't send super chat either. Well, you can. I don't know if you were ever able to send super chat in this channel, but I think you can still send super chat on the other channel. So because this one's not monetized, but if you ever feel like you want like your generosity abounds, you can always just send it directly to me on Ko-fi, and I will be appreciative anyway. But yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to look into like any changes that they've done in YouTube, because I don't appreciate it. I really like to just send you guys hearts, like spam you with hearts. That was my favorite part about talking to you guys. But anyway, I just imagine that I'm spamming you all kinds of hearts, okay? To Little Butterfly, to Crusher, to Akihana. Hey darling, you're here. I'm glad that it works for your zone, your time zone. Yay. Happy that you're here. I hope you enjoy it. Says, I was almost persuaded to stay in bed by my bed, but alas, Austen's persuasive persuasion is simply too strong to fight. Love it, love it. Well, I'm glad that the story is so far, it's engrossing enough that you're here and you're here to find out what happens to our poor Anne. Let the counter begin. The poor Anne counter begins now. I don't know who's gonna keep track. How many times have I said it so far? 2? I think I said it 2. So yeah, somebody keep count every time I say the phrase, to count it. Anyway, let's see. So I'm happy that you're here. The story will start like getting into its stride in this read along, I believe, hopefully. So yeah, happy that you're here to listening to us live. Also, TL says, I find it admirable that we're still using persuasion jokes. I know, and I see that you're a champion for the puns, TL. You are amazing. First you got us into the Airly gang, and now the admirable. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you for that that contribution. Keep the puns coming, please. And Akihana replies, says, what can I say, Teal? It started with the early gang's early puns. That's right. Shouldn't be surprising that the trend continues with Persuasion. You guys are wizards, and I'm happy that you guys are finding stuff. I wonder what we should have done for the Blue Castle. Like, what pun could be... Like, you know what? I don't think the Blue Castle needed anything because it already had stupid Uncle Benjamin's jokes. we had an overflow of silliness with his jokes. So yeah, I think we're good with the Blue Castle. But I'm really enjoying these puns, you guys, with the early puns, the early gang, and the persuasions. So okay. So hello to Crusher. Hello to Little Butterfly, who says who's here. Time Lord Boy says hello. It's late where I am. Where are you at, Time Lord Boy? Are you Europe gang? Are you East Coast gang? Let me know. Crusher says Magpie. Used bookstores are much cheaper than Barnes and Noble. Check out Library Channel. Library Channel for books. Yes, I will check that out. Oh, let me see. Library Channel. Oh, on the Discord. Okay. Let me see. Are we talking about the thing I posted the other day? Okay, so you guys, if you guys didn't know, and I think this may be what he's talking about, what Crusher's talking about, this August we are celebrating Ellen Montgomery's 150th birthday. So 150 years ago, Ellen Montgomery, the author of The Blue Castle, Anne of Green Gables, etc., she was born. And so I saw that somebody, like there's a couple of people that are, oh, here we go. Okay, so a couple of people are releasing a new version of The Blue Castle. So that's probably what I thought it was, but I think Crusher just wants to share his book haul. So let's see Crusher's book haul. Okay, look at that. Dang, that's a good one. You got you managed to find a sentence of a bookworm on a used bookstore? Oh, how dare someone abandon a little book of bookworm in a used bookstore? How dare they? Those are collectibles, in my opinion. Now you got the complete novels Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Mansfield Park, Emma, Northanger Abbey, Persuasion, and Lady Susan. Those are really good ones. I think they're listed by publication date, I believe. Persuasion was her last. Persuasion and Northanger Abbey were published together. They were published posthumously, so after she had passed away. And Lady Susan was one that was never completed. And I think I think they did like an adaptation of what it was. Don't quote me. Probably, I'm not sure if it's Love and Friendship or if it was another one that PBS Masterpiece did. I forget. Anyway, but yeah, this is a really good book. If it's the complete novels, you got it. Look at that. Lucky you. I have a tiny little Persuasion with me. Like, that's one of the very few books I own. I just have to find it. It's in one of my boxes with books. Ooh, pretty. Oh, I love this. Look at that. Okay. So snag the complete works of Austen for $1 at a used bookstore. Wow, that is an amazing haul. And yes, definitely always check your local libraries. They have places where you can get used books. Be on the lookout for books. It's always good to support your local libraries by buying from their little bookstores. So check them out. Thank you for the tip, Crusher. I will be on the lookout for any books. Usually whenever I go to like a used bookstore, I like to just go slowly through the aisles looking for old books that I like, that I want to have. So yeah. All right, let's see. Teal says, yes, the early gang lives on. Sorry, work is crazy. I can't chat as often as I'd like. No worries, Teal. I know your line of work right now might be a little busy, but just knowing that you're here checking in occasionally gives me life. Thank you for joining. I'm glad the early gang lives on. Red Tempest, hey, it says, how do you persuade elephants to go swimming? Remind them that they already that they already have their trunks on. Oh my goodness, Red Tempest, are you trying to get the Uncle Benjamin role in Discord? Because if you keep this up, if you keep on bringing up those silly little puns and jokes, wow, that's good. That is good. Oh, yes. Okay, Tam Lord is in UK. Yes, it's very late for you, but thank you for showing up. I hope that this read-along will be relaxing and at least maybe just relax you a little further into the arms of Schlafdrum so you can have sweet dreams. All right, you guys. Thank you for showing off your wit. Thank you for showing off your book hauls. Oh, and I was about to start reading, but I see something from Crusher. It says, here's a Blue Castle pun for Valency Sterling. Valency finally found her sterling moment of courage. Ooh, yes, I love it. That's cute. By the way, you guys, speaking of Valency Sterling, tomorrow, Ko-fi members, remember tomorrow we are recording the Blue Castle chit chat. So just as in the other channel, we do group discussions, we answer questions, we go through the book chronologically and like talk about our favorite parts and whatnot. We will be having the same treatment for Blue Castle tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Don't miss it. Is it 5 or 4? I think it was 4 o'clock Pacific. I forget when it was. Let me check my Discord. Sorry, you guys. I have so much stuff going on, you guys. And then they sent a letter from the leasing office that they're gonna come into my apartment to inspect I don't know what things. I'm like, dudes, does that mean I have to haul my furniture around so they can have access to like this part that they're gonna inspect? I'm like, oh my gosh, so much stuff to do. Why couldn't they have done this another time? So yeah, summer has been crazy. Okay, so tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific on my Discord server, we're gonna talk all about the Blue Castle. If you want to join, remember you can become a member in Ko-fi and you have instant access to my Discord server and all the other fun stuff that we do over there. And also, while we're here in the events, we also have Teal's birthday bash. We will be watching a whole bunch of anime. Girls band cry because she can't stand it so few people know about this anime. So we're going to watch it, you guys. And it'll be amazing. And then on July 20th, Patrick is holding the weekly anime movie night. Going to be watching A Silent Voice and, what is it? Ride Your Wave. Ooh, I've heard of the first one, not the second one. So anyway, you guys, there's a lot of reasons why you should join the Discord server. First off, because you will be making your magpie very happy. Second, because you will be joining an amazing community of fellow bookworms who love barrel jokes, who adore baffling newcomers with questions about cobra chickens. And we're just wholesome community, so do join us. And anyway, how about we get started with the Blue Castle, you guys? All right. Oh, here's another. Valency was never too blue for her castle, says Akihana. I love it. Yes. All right. Little Butterfly is also looking forward to the Blue Castle chat. So, darling, I hope you can make it tomorrow. And it'll be all sorts of fun, even if it's just you and me, girl. And maybe Red Tempest, who can probably join in. I don't know, you guys. Even if it's just a few of us, I think it'll be okay. Let's do this, you guys. Beware of magpie simpiness. Who do I simp for in this book? Did I simp for anybody? Did I simp? Oh, okay. If you're in the Discord channel, Discord server, yeah, I have a channel dedicated to Ferdinand. So what can I do? Can't keep a good simp down. Okay, let's get this started, you guys. I want to apologize ahead a little bit in advance. I have a little bit of an allergy, so my nose may be might make my voice sound a little different. But I'm okay. It's just a little bit of allergies. Okay. All right. So let's get this started. Persuasion, chapter 5. All right. By the way, just TLDR, what happened last time? Jane, Anne is moving from her family home because they're going to rent it, or they're going to lease it to somebody else who has money to help them pay for their debts. Her family is titled, but they're poor. Her father and sister are ridiculous. They don't want to they don't want to save money. They don't want to do the necessary sacrifices to be back on the right track. So they'd rather just rent out the house. So that's what happens. She is going to leave her home. And it turns out that the people who are going to be renting her home are somewhat related to the man of the love of her life, whom she got engaged to 8 years ago, and then she dumped him, or she broke off their engagement. So there's a little bit of a history with that family, kind of related, but she's hoping that there won't be any need for any of that to come up at any time. So I think that's a good TLDR. Yes. Okay, let's do this. On the morning appointed for Admiral and Mrs. Croft's seeing Kellynch Hall, Anne found it most natural to take her almost daily walk to Lady Russell's and keep out of the way till all was over, when she found it most natural to be sorry that she had missed the opportunity of seeing them. This meeting of the two parties proved highly satisfactory, and decided the whole business at once. Each lady was previously well disposed for an agreement, and saw nothing, therefore, but good manners in the other. And with regard to the gentlemen, there was such a hearty good humour, such an open, trusting liberality on the Admiral's side, as could not but influence Sir Walter, who had besides been flattered into his very best and most polished behaviour by Mr. Shepherd's assurances of his being known, by report, to the Admiral as a model of good breeding. The house and grounds and furniture were approved. The Crofts were approved. Terms, time, everything, and everybody was right. And Mr. Shepherd's clerks were set to work, without there having been a single preliminary difference to modify of all that this indenture showeth. Sir Walter, without hesitation, declared the Admiral to be the best-looking sailor he had ever met with, and went so far as to say that if his own man might have had the arranging of his hair, he should not be ashamed of being seen with him anywhere, and that the Admiral, with sympathetic cordiality, observed to his wife as they drove back through the park, "I thought we should soon come to a deal, my dear, in spite of what they told us at Taunton. The baronet will never set the Thames on fire, but there seems no harm in him." Reciprocal compliments which would have been esteemed about equal. The Crofts were to have possession at Michaelmas, and Sir Walter proposed removing to Bath in the course of the preceding month. There was no time to be lost in making every dependent arrangement. Lady Russell, convinced that Anne would not be allowed to be of any use or any importance in the choice of the house which they were going to secure, was very unwilling to have her hurried away so soon, and wanted to make it possible for her to stay behind till she might convey her to Bath herself after Christmas. But, having engagements of her own, which must take her from Kellynch for several weeks, she was unable to give the full invitation she wished, and Anne, though dreading the possible heats of September in all the white glare of Bath, and grieving to forego all the influence so sweet and so sad of the autumnal months in the country, did not think that, everything considered, she wished to remain. It would be most right and most wise, and therefore must involve least suffering to go with the others. Something occurred, however, to give her a different duty. Mary, often a little unwell, and always Mary is her youngest sister, to those I forgot, Mary, often a little unwell, and always thinking a great deal of her own complaints, and always in the habit of claiming Anne when anything was the matter, was indisposed, and foreseeing that she should not have a day's health all the autumn, entreated, or rather required her, for it was hardly entreaty, to come to Uppercross Cottage and bear her company as long as she should want her, instead of going to Bath. "I cannot possibly do without Anne," was Mary's reasoning, and Elizabeth's reply was, "Then I am sure Anne had better stay, for nobody will want her in Bath." To be claimed as a good, though in an improper style, is at least better than being rejected as no good at all. And Anne, glad to be thought of some use, glad to have anything marked out as a duty, and certainly not sorry to have the scene of it in the country. And certainly not sorry to have the scene of it in the country, and her own dear country, readily agreed to stay. This invitation of Mary's removed all Lady Russell's difficulties, and it was consequently soon settled that Anne should not go to Bath till Lady Russell took her, and that all the intervening time should be divided between Uppercross Cottage and Kellynch Lodge. So far, all was perfectly right. But Lady Russell was almost startled by the wrong of one part of the Kellynch Hall plan when it burst on her, which was Mrs. Clay's being engaged to go to Bath with Sir Walter and Elizabeth as a most important and valuable assistant to the latter in all the business before her. Ooh, so they're taking the widow Mrs. Clay. Oh. So remember, Lady Russell did not want this. Actually, she's not a widow. She's a divorcee. This lady, she doesn't seem to be. She doesn't approve of her. She seems like, you guys will remember, Lady Russell has one failing, is that she's very status conscious. So she sees this commoner divorcee wanting to get close to the Elliot family, and she doesn't approve of that. So now this Mrs. Clay is going to join them in Bath. Oh, man. She was like, man, I want to get these two separated, but apparently, no, it's not going to happen. Elizabeth is too attached to Mrs. Clay, because Elizabeth is like, nobody wants Anne in Bath. Like, yo, Anne is your sister. Come on. Oh, man. Poor Anne. Okay, so Mrs. Clay is being engaged to go to Bath with, okay. Lady Russell was extremely sorry that such a measure should have been resorted to at all, wondered, grieved, and feared, and the affront it contained to Anne, and Mrs. Clay's being of so much use, while Anne could be of none, was a very sore aggravation. Anne herself was become hardened to such affronts, but she felt the imprudence of the arrangement quite as keenly as Lady Russell. With a great deal of quiet observation, and a knowledge, which she often wished less, of her father's character, she was sensible that results the most serious to his family from the intimacy were more than possible. She did not imagine that her father had at present an idea of the kind. Mrs. Clay had freckles, and a projecting tooth, and a clumsy wrist, which he was continually making severe remarks upon in her absence. But she was young, and certainly altogether well-looking, and possessed, in an acute mind and assiduous pleasing manners, infinitely more dangerous attractions than any merely personal might have been. Anne was so impressed by the degree of their danger that she could not excuse herself from trying to make it perceptible to her sister. She had little hope of success, but Elizabeth, who in the events of such a reverse would be so much more to be pitied than herself, should never, she thought, have reason to reproach her for giving no warning. She spoke, and seemed only to offend. Okay, so Anne is like, okay, so Mrs. Clay might be aiming to become our mama, and if that happens, I mean, it's not impossible for that to happen. And if it happens, Elizabeth is going to lose her rank. Like, Elizabeth she acts as the kind of like the hostess of the home. But if Mrs. Clay gets married to their father, then Elizabeth's going to lose that precedence that she had before. And Elizabeth is like, actually got offended. She says she spoke and seemed only to offend. Elizabeth could not conceive how such an absurd suspicion should occur to her, and indignantly answered for each party's perfectly knowing their situation. Mrs. Clay, said she warmly, never forgets who she is, and, as I am rather better acquainted with her sentiments than you can be, I can assure you that upon the subject of marriage they are particularly nice, and that she reprobates all inequality of condition and rank more strongly than most people. And as to my father, I really should not have thought that he, who has kept himself single for so long for our sakes, need be suspected now. If Mrs. Clay were a very beautiful woman, I grant you, it might be wrong to have her so much with me. Not that anything in the world, I am sure, would induce my father to make a degrading match, but he might be rendered unhappy. But poor Mrs. Clay, who, with all her merits, can never have been reckoned tolerably pretty, I really think poor Mrs. Clay might be staying here in perfect safety. One would imagine you had never heard of my father speak of her personal misfortunes, though I know you must 50 times. That tooth of hers, and those freckles! Freckles do not disgust me so very much as they do him. I have known a face not materially disfigured by a few, but he abominates them. You must have heard him notice Mrs. Clay's freckles. There is hardly any personal defect, replied Anne, which an agreeable manner might not gradually reconcile one to. Well, I think very differently, answered Elizabeth shortly. An agreeable manner may set off handsome features, but can never alter plain ones. However, at any rate, as I have a great deal more at stake on this point than anybody else can have, I think it rather unnecessary in you to be advising me. Anne had done, glad that it was sober, and not absolutely hopeless of doing good. Elizabeth, though resenting the suspicion, might yet be made observant by it. The last office of... What do you guys think? Do you guys really think... Okay, so here's the question. Anne says that somebody who is like making themselves like really like doing the effort to make themselves agreeable to people, like in time you stop noticing personal defects like freckles and I don't know, I guess she has a crooked tooth or something. I don't know. So that's like that makes Mrs. Clay like her personal defects are so great, her freckles and her tooth are so great, that the father would never think of marrying her. That's what Elizabeth says. But Anne is saying, like, yeah, but if you have a charming disposition and you really work hard at charming somebody, like eventually they're gonna overlook those personal defects. I don't know. What do you guys think? We know so far a little bit of Sir Walter Elliot, and we know that he has he has several failings. One of them is his vanity. He's all about looks. The second one is his vanity, his pride in his status. So if somebody were to come around and say anything they want to say, like talk them up to the skies, make them feel important and valued, and at some point they're going to be like, I like hanging around you. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that Mrs. Clay is actually could be dangerous, could actually become Mama Elliot? What do you guys think? Now, let's see. I think I see some chats here. Hold on a sec. Let's see. We see chats. Akihana says, I do wonder, could Mrs. Clay and Elizabeth actually be much more intimately involved with each other? Oh, gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. Well, we will see. I don't know. I don't think it's we will see, because the book never goes in that direction. But that's historically women found it a little bit easier to kind of hide not hide, but like play off their close friendship with other women, because they were like, oh, what a precious friendship you guys have. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it was like that, but it's a possibility. Maybe. I mean, the way that Elizabeth seems to absolutely cling to her, and she's like, yeah, Mrs. Clay, come with me to Bath, and who cares about Anne? I don't need my sister around. Who cares about her? I don't know. The way that she clings so much to Mrs. Clay is annoying to me because Anne is so sweet. Like she has sense. She might be a tad, not babe, like not fashionable and beautiful like society's whatever, but she's still a good girl. Now it's poor Mrs. Clay that gets repeated. Oh, and Akihana is keeping track of the counter, the Anne counter. Thank you. Akihana says, I take it back. No way the two women are that intimate. Okay. Walter's weakness is definitely his vanity. Yeah. So if I think that Mrs. Clay, I don't know, I'm just biased maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm being like unfair like Mrs. Russell, but then again, I have read the book. So anyway, I just don't trust Mrs. Clay, okay? And neither should you. Spoiler alert. I mean, that's all. Just I just don't trust somebody who's so simpering and who's so obviously trying to like kiss up to people. Like, there's nothing about spoilers to like just be put off by that stuff, okay? So Akihana says, praise him more than enough and he's bound to take attention to you soon enough, regardless of your appearance. Right. I remember you guys. There was this guy in school and I swear to you guys, like he was not attractive at all. He was really not attractive, but oh my gosh, could he had it, like whatever it is that makes you like draw people like magnets. Like he was like a magnet for people. He had charm, he had humor, he had wit. Oh my gosh. And I ended up, me and I run 3 other girls in my class that I knew of had a crush on him. So never ever downplay a charming disposition, because even if you're the plainest, most whatever person if you have personality, it's gonna serve you well, and it'll take you a long way. Just learn to use it. Trust me. I know. I am ashamed to think about it now, because, like, now that I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's true. I was charmed. Okay. Now that I think about it, I had a crush on that guy for a while. But again, it's just being a very magnetic kind of personality, very personable, very charming. So yeah, I think that even if you're not attractive, you can still do things and get your way. Yeah, I think she may be able to persuade him. Crusher says, for friendships, in my opinion, shortcomings are always eventually overlooked. As for relationships that are more romantic, I don't know. High charisma stats. Yeah, high charisma stats. You can. Yeah, friendships definitely, like in a friendship, somebody's looks they're not really that important in a friendship, because it's all about like we hang out, we have a common interests, common things, common humor, sense of humor, whatever. Doesn't matter if like about another person's looks, but in a relationship, yes, of course it matters most, because first is what you see, and so the first thing is you're attracted by what you see. That's it. That's it. But if you're thrown enough together, whether you like it or not, you start learning more about the person, and maybe something can happen. Akihana says, well, in Mrs. Clay's is probably more of a fake charisma. Yes, of course. You can totally fake it. And it wouldn't be difficult, because Sir Elliot, Walter Elliot, he's such a one-track mind. He's so easy to be played. You know what I mean? Something like silent seduction, says Akihana. Maybe. A crush, you say, says Crusher. Yes. Oh my goodness. I can't believe we made another pun. I love it. All right, let's continue on with the book. Okay. The last office of the 4-carriage horses was to draw Sir Walter, Miss Elliot, and Mrs. Clay to Bath. The party drove off in very good spirits. Sir Walter prepared with condescending bows for all the afflicted tenantry and cottagers who might have had a hint to show themselves, and Anne walked up at the same time in a sort of disconsolate tranquillity to the lodge, where she was to spend the first week. Her friend was not in better spirits than herself. Lady Russell felt this breakup of the family exceedingly. Their respectability was as dear to her as her own, and a daily intercourse had become precious by habit. It was painful to look upon their deserted grounds, and still worse to anticipate the new hands they were to fall into. And to escape the solitariness and the melancholy of so altered a village, and be out of the way when Admiral and Mrs. Croft first arrived, she had determined to make her own absence from home begin when she must give up Anne. So Lady Russell's like, yo, this is sad and depressing. I'm going to make sure that I don't have to be around when the new tenants come, because it's that depressing to me. All right. Accordingly, the removal was made together, and Anne was set down at Uppercross Cottage in the first stage of Lady Russell's journey. So now Anne is going to go to visit her sister, to stay with her sister Mary for some time during the autumn. So let's meet Mary. Uppercross was a moderate-sized village, which a few years back had been completely in the old English style, containing only 2 houses superior in appearance to those of the yeomen and labourers. The mansion of the squire, with its high walls, great gates, and old trees, substantial and unmodernized, and the compact tight parsonage, enclosed in its own neat garden, with a vine and pear tree trained round its casements. But upon the marriage of the young squire, that is Charles Musgrove, it had received the improvement of a farmhouse elevated into a cottage for his residence, and Uppercross Cottage, with its veranda, French windows, and other prettiness, was quite as likely to catch the traveller's eye as the more consistent and considerable aspect and premises of the great house, about a quarter-mile further on. Here Anne had often been staying. She knew the ways of Uppercross as well as those of Kellynch. The 2 families were so continually meeting, so much in the habit of running in and out of each other's houses at all hours, that it was rather a surprise to her to find Mary alone. But being alone, her being unwell and out of spirits, was almost a matter of course. Though better endowed than the elder sister, Mary had not Anne's understanding nor temper. While well and happy, and properly attended to, she had a great good humour and excellent spirits, but any indisposition sunk her completely. She had no resources for solitude, and inheriting a considerable share of the Elliot self-importance, was very prone to add to every other distress that of fancying herself neglected and ill-used. In person, she was inferior to both sisters, and had even, in her bloom, only reached the dignity of being a fine girl. She was now lying on the faded sofa of the pretty little drawing-room, the once elegant furniture of which had been gradually growing shabby under the influence of 4 summers and 2 children, and, on Anne's appearing, greeted her with, "So, you have come at last. I began to think I should never see you. I am so ill I can hardly speak. I have not seen a creature the whole morning." "I am sorry to find you unwell," replied Anne. "You sent me such a good account of yourself on Thursday." "Yes, I made the best of it, as I always do, but I was very far from well at the time, and I do not think I was ever so ill in my life as I have been all this morning. Very unfit to be left alone, I am sure. Suppose I were to be seized of a sudden in some dreadful way, and not be able to ring the bell." So, Lady Russell would not get out. You know how Lady Russell just dropped Anne off? She didn't even say, like, "I'm going to go say hello to your sister." She's just like, "Okay, Anne, just dropping you off. I'm on my way to do whatever else I'm going to do." So Lady Russell, she's now, she's kind of upset that Lady Russell wouldn't come down to say hello to her. So Lady Russell would not get out. I do not think she has been in this house 3 times this summer. Anne said what was proper, and inquired after her husband. Oh, Charles is out shooting. I have not seen him since 7 o'clock. He would go, though I told him how ill I was. He said he should not stay out long, but he has never come back, and now it is almost 1. I assure you I have not seen a soul this whole morning. You have had your little boys with you? Yes, as long as I could bear their noise, but they're so unmanageable that they do me more harm than good. Little Charles does not mind a word I say, and Walter is growing quite as bad. Well, you will soon be better now, replied Anne cheerfully. You know I always cure you when I come. How are your neighbors at the great house? I can give you no account of them. I have not seen one of them today except Mr. Musgrove, who just stopped and spoke through the window, but without getting off his horse, and though I told him how ill I was, not one of them had been near me. It did not happen to suit the Miss Musgroves, I suppose, and they never put themselves out of their way. You will see them yet, perhaps, before the morning is gone. It is early. I never want them, I assure you. They talk and they laugh a great deal too much for me. Oh, Anne, I am so very unwell. It was quite unkind of you not to come on Thursday. My dear Mary, recollect what a comfortable account you sent me of yourself. You wrote in the cheerfulest manner, and said you were perfectly well, and in no hurry for me. And that being the case, you must be aware that my wish would be to remain with Lady Russell to the last. And besides what I felt on her account, I have really been busy. I have had so much to do that I could not very conveniently have left Kellynch sooner. Dear me, what can you possibly have to do? A great many things, I assure you, more than I can recollect in a moment, but I can tell you some. I have been making a duplicate of the catalogue of my father's books and pictures. I have been several times in the garden with Mackenzie, trying to understand and make him understand which of Elizabeth's plans are for Lady Russell. I have had all my own little concerns to arrange, books and music to divide, all my trunks to repack, from not having understood in time what was intended as to the wagons, and one thing I have had to do, Mary, of a more trying nature, going to almost every house in the parish as a sort of take leave. I was told that they wished it, but all these things took up a great deal of time. Ah, well, and after a moment's pause, but you have never asked me one word about our dinner at the Pools yesterday. Did you go, then? I have made no inquiries because I concluded you must have been obliged to give up the party. Oh, yes, I went. I was very well yesterday. Nothing at all the matter with me till this morning. It would have been strange if I had not gone. I'm very glad you were well enough, and I hope you had a pleasant party. Nothing remarkable. One always knows beforehand what the dinner will be and who will be there, and it is so very uncomfortable not having a carriage of one's own. Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove took me, and we were so crowded. They are both so very large and take up so much room. And Mr. Musgrove always sits forward. So there was I, crowded into the back seat with Henrietta and Louisa, and I think it very likely that my illness today may be owing to it. A little further perseverance and patience and forced cheerfulness on Anne's side produced nearly a cure on Mary's. She could soon sit upright on the sofa, and began to hope she might be able to leave it by dinner time. Then, forgetting to think of it, she was at the other end of the room, beautifying a nosegay. Then she ate her cold meat. And then she was well enough to propose a little walk. Where shall we go? Said she, when they were ready. I suppose you will not like to call at the great house before they have been to see you. I have not the smallest objection on that account, replied Anne. I should never think of standing on such ceremony with people I know so well as a Mr. and Miss Musgroves. So again, Mary is super conscious of status. She thinks that people should come visit her. She took it personally that, first of all, that Lady Russell would not come out of her carriage to see her when she dropped Anne off. Also, that her father-in-law came to say hello this morning, but he was in his horse and he just peeked at her window and said hello. So again, she thinks that as the daughter of a baronet, she deserves like more attention, more respect. So anyway, so that's why she's saying that it is the people in the other house, the great house, the Musgroves, should come and visit Anne and say hello to Anne. That it shouldn't be the other way around. Anne should not have to go and say hello to them. It's just not proper, like status-wise. Or at least etiquette-wise. All right. Kihana says, I'd say her illness is a lack of attention sickness. Yes, indeed. And she's overly self-important. She gets it from her father. That's who she gets it from. So she says, but they ought to call you upon... No. But they ought to call upon you as soon as possible. They ought to feel what is due to you as my sister. However, we may as well go and sit with them a little while, and when we have got that over, we can enjoy our walk. Anne had always thought such a style of intercourse highly imprudent, but she had ceased to endeavor to check it, from believing that, though there were on each side continual subjects of offense, neither family could now do without it. To the great house, accordingly, they went, to sit the full half-hour in the old-fashioned square parlor, with a small carpet and shining floor, to which the present daughters of the house were gradually given the proper air of confusion by a grand pianoforte and a harp, flower stands, and little tables placed in every direction. Oh, could the originals of the portraits against the wainscot, could the gentlemen in the brown velvet and the ladies in blue satin have seen what was going on, have been conscious of such an overthrow of all order and neatness. The portraits themselves seemed to be staring in astonishment. The Musgroves, like their houses, were in a state of alteration, perhaps of improvement. The father and mother were in the old English style, and the young people in the new. Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove were a very good sort of people, friendly and hospitable, though not much educated, and not at all elegant. Their children had more modern minds and manners. There was a numerous family, but the only two grown up, excepting Charles, were Henrietta and Louisa, young ladies of 19 and 20, who had brought from a school at Exeter all their usual stock of accomplishments, and were now, like thousands of other young ladies, living to be fashionable, happy, and merry. Their dress had every advantage. Their faces were rather pretty, their spirits extremely good, their manner unembarrassed and pleasant. They were of consequence at home, and favorites abroad, and always contemplated them as some of the happiest creatures of her acquaintance. But still, saved as we all are, by some comfortable feeling of superiority from wishing for the possibility of exchange, she would not have given up her more elegant and cultivated mind for all their enjoyments, and envied them nothing but that seemingly perfect good understanding and agreement together, that good-humored mutual affection, of which she had known so little herself with either of her sisters. Aw, poor Anne. Again, like Anne is like saying like, yeah, they're beautiful, they are wealthy, they're young, but ultimately she's like, I don't really envy them because I'm happy as I am, I guess. The only thing I envy them is the fact that together, Louisa and Henrietta, they're good, they get along very well together. Like, it's so lovely to see. She wishes she had a sister to like get along with so well. And the saddest thing about it, you guys, is that she has two sisters. She has Elizabeth and she has Mary, and neither of them are good sisters to her. They all just like Elizabeth. Okay, you guys, let me tell you what was the problem. Well, let me just finish the chapter, and we'll talk about Elizabeth and the chores that she left Anne to do. Um, four already, four. Thank you, Akihana, for keeping track. But is it not true? Was that fourth one not warranted, you guys? So she wishes she had that kind of like relation with one of her sisters. They were received with great cordiality. Nothing seemed amiss on the side of the great house family, which was generally, as Anne very well knew, the least to blame. The half hour was chatted away pleasantly enough, and she was not at all surprised, at the end of it, to have their walking party joined by both the Miss Musgroves at Mary's particular invitation. End of chapter. All right, you guys. So let's talk about some of the stuff that in this chapter. I just wanted to point out some things in case you guys didn't catch it. But do you guys read all the chores that Anne had to do? Let me go back to it. Okay. Let's discuss them. So a great many deals. Okay, first of all, Mary, what the heck? What is this? What can you possibly have to do? Honestly, it reminds me of Sylvester when he asks Rosamond, like, what do you have to do? Just let Ferdinand take care of it. No. Mary has to do these things. Like, don't take things for granted. So she has been because they're gonna rent out the house, she wanted to make sure that they have a stock of all the stuff that the house has, like the books and pictures, their stuff that they own personally. Also, they went into the garden. She went into a garden to try to sort out Elizabeth's plans. Like, Elizabeth, why didn't she do that? Like, why did she have to throw that chore on Anne? She just left. She, her father, and Mrs. Clay all left to spend their autumn in Bath and leaving Anne all of these things. And then, Anne, of course, has to also move out. So, again, because they weren't organized, whoever was doing the move, they weren't organized, so she had to repack all her things. And then this is the one that makes me the most angry, or maybe most upset. Okay, going to almost every house in the parish as a sort of take leave. Okay, so Elizabeth is considered the lady of the house, right? She is the oldest daughter. All of the responsibility of looking after the household is on her, doing the ladies' work. That includes doing charity work and like making sure that people in your neighborhood are like the poorest of the poor. They're not starving. You take them food or whatever. But she cut that charity off earlier in the book. And then when you leave the neighborhood, you make sure to inform the people in the neighborhood, in the village, people that rely on the great house, about you're leaving and you have to do this. And don't worry, like, yes, we're leaving, but there's going to be somebody coming in. And we made sure that the people renting the house are a good set of people. This is stuff that Elizabeth, as the hostess and woman of the house, the main lady of the house, should have done, and she left it to Anne, you guys, because she is a self-absorbed, selfish little leech, okay? Yes, Anne is the middle child crusher. So many chores for Anne. Ugh. So anyway... Crusher says, now that I have a physical copy of Persuasion, I might read ahead and make memes. Do! But I'm not sure if I should at this point. It's a pretty small book. It is a small book. It is a very small book, you guys. But I think you'll enjoy it. But you should do it because we need as many memes as we can get. Unless you want to make them on the fly after each read along, and then I can share them. Up to you. Either way, I just want you to choose the option that does it so you don't miss these read alongs. Yes. Akihana says, seriously, what did their mother see in their father? Right? So the book did address this fact that the mother did make a mistake in choosing Sir Walter Elliot as her husband, but she made the best of it. She's like, we're gonna forgive the fact that she was young and she was foolish and she fell in love and she was persuaded to get married to him. So, but it was a youthful folly that she decided to make the best of it. And she did do the best of it while she was alive. She made sure that the home kept running well. There was no debt. There was economy. All in all, her influence was helping Sir Elliot to not be such a clown. But then she died, and then he ran the house amok. So yeah, and there was money, of course. There was definitely money involved. There's always money in titles. So probably she was also like of the same, like the daughter of a baronet, because I do not see Sir Walter Elliot marrying anybody that's not of his same rank or above. But definitely money could have been the thing. But it does say that it was like a youthful folly. So it was probably she had a crush on him, or she became, for some reason, she fell in love with him, and it was youthful foolishness. And it was like marry at haste, repent at leisure, that kind of thing. But she was not bitter. She did make the best of it. I should look for that quote later on. But if somebody wants to help me later, you can also do that. All right, so let me return. My throat is feeling really dry. I think it's because of the allergy. So if it sounds, again, if I have to stop a little more often to hydrate, you know why. All right, let's continue on. Chapter 6. Last chapter for today. Chapter 6. Anne had not wanted this visit to Uppercross to learn that a removal from one set of people to another, though at a distance of only 3 miles, will often include a total change of conversation, opinion, and idea. She had never been staying there before without being struck by it, or without wishing that other Elliots could have her advantage in seeing how unknown, how unconsidered there were the affairs which at Kellynch Hall were treated as of such general publicity and pervading interest. Yet, with all this experience, she believed she must now submit to feel that another lesson in the art of knowing our own nothingness beyond our own circle was become necessary for her. For certainly, coming as she did, with a heart full of the subject which had been completely occupying both houses in Kellynch for many weeks, she had expected rather more curiosity and sympathy than she found in the separate but very similar remark of Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove. "So, Miss Anne, Sir Walter and your sister are gone, and what part of Bath do you think they will settle in?" And this, without much waiting for an answer, or in the young lady's edition of, "I hope we shall be in Bath the next winter. But remember, Papa, if we do go, we must be in good situation. None of your Queen squares for us." Or in the anxious supplement from Mary of, "Upon my word, I shall be very pretty well off when you're all gone away to be happy at Bath." She could only resolve to avoid such self-delusion in the future, and think with heightened gratitude of the extraordinary blessing of having one such truly sympathizing friend as Lady Russell. So again, Anne is saying like, well, it sucks that in her life has just been turned upside down. She has lost her home. It's being rented out by people, and that's all that she and her family have been able to think about and talk about. But when she goes to other people's houses, even though they're neighbors, they're not too far off. They're like, "Oh, well, that's too bad. So where do you guys think you will live in Bath?" Like they're sympathize, but like they don't get it. So she's like, okay, like I knew, like I know my family's self-absorbed, but probably I'm also being a little bit self-absorbed because I expected people to be a little bit more sympathizing with me. But no, darling Anne, no, people are just people. And I wish that somebody could really feel with your... Oh, it must feel horrible, you guys. No, I know it feels horrible when you have to leave your, like, the home, your family home. I have done that once or twice. No, once. And it feels terrible. It's your little universe. It's gone. So, yeah. Poor Anne. All right. So at least she has Lady Russell, who is like truly sympathizes for her. But Lady Russell's not here right now, so now Anne has to kind of like settle for the background and just hear and be excited for other people's things that they're excited about. The Mr. Musgroves had their own game to guard and to destroy, their own horses, dogs, and newspapers to engage them, and the females were fully occupied in all the other common subjects of housekeeping, neighbors, dress, dancing, and music. She acknowledged it to be very fitting that every little social commonwealth should dictate its own matters of discourse, and hoped, ere long, to become a not unworthy member of the one she was now transplanted into. With the prospect of spending at least 2 months at Uppercross, it was highly incumbent on her to clothe her imagination, her memory, and all her ideas in as much of Uppercross as possible. She had no dread of these 2 months. Mary was not so repulsive and unsisterly as Elizabeth, nor so inaccessible to all influence of hers. Neither was there anything among the other component parts of the cottage inimical to comfort. She was always on friendly terms with her brother-in-law and in the children, who loved her nearly as well and respected her a great deal more than their mother. She had an object of interest, amusement, and wholesome exertion. Charles Musgrove, that's her brother-in-law, the one who married Mary and who at one time had asked Anne to marry him. Charles Musgrove was civil and agreeable. In sense and temper, he was undoubtedly superior to his wife, but not of powers or conversation or grace to make the past, as they were connected together, at all a dangerous contemplation. Though at the same time, Anne could believe, with Lady Russell, that a more equal match might have greatly improved him, and that a woman of real understanding might have given more consequence to his character, and more usefulness, rationality, and elegance to his habits and pursuits. There you go, Anne. Why didn't you just marry Charles Musgrove and help him out? Oh my goodness. Oh, because Anne, again, was still hung up with her old flame. So Anne is like saying, yeah, I love my sister, but he probably should have done better and gotten somebody else. And he would have been a better person, or it would have improved him quite a bit. Which is kind of like, ouch, Anne, this is your sister, but again, Anne sees things, okay? Anne knows things. As it was, Charles did nothing with much zeal but sport, and his time was otherwise trifled away without benefit from books or anything else. He had very good spirits, which never seemed much affected by his wife's occasional lowness, bore with her unreasonableness sometimes to Anne's admiration, and upon the whole, though there was very often a little disagreement, in which she had sometimes more share than she wished, being appealed to by both parties, they might pass for a happy couple. They were always perfectly agreed in the want of more money, and a strong inclination for a handsome present from his father. But here, as on most topics, he had the superiority, for while Mary thought it a great shame that such a present was not made, he always contended for his father's having many other uses for his money and the right to spend it as he liked. As to the management of their children, his theory was much better than his wife's, and his practice not so bad. I could manage them very well if it were not for Mary's interference, was what Anne often heard him say, and had a good deal of faith in. But when listening in turn to Mary's reproach of Charles spoils the children so that I cannot get them into any order, she never had the smallest temptation to say, very true. One of the least agreeable circumstances of her residence there was her being treated with too much confidence by all parties, and being too much in the secret of the complaints of each house. Known to have some influence with her sister, she was continually requested, or at least receiving hints to exert it, beyond what was practicable. I wish you could persuade... No, this is Charles. I wish you could persuade Mary not to always fancy herself so ill, was Charles' language, and in an unhappy mood, thus spoke Mary. I do believe if Charles were to see me dying, he would not think there was anything the matter with me, I am sure. With me. I am sure, Anne, if you would, you might persuade him that I really am very ill, a great deal worse than I ever own. Mary's declaration was, I hate sending the children to the great house, though their grandmamma is always wanting to see them, for she humors and indulges them to such a degree, and gives them so much trash and sweet things, that they are sure to come back sick and cross for the rest of the day. And Mrs. Musgrove took the first opportunity of being alone with Anne to say, Oh, Miss Anne, I cannot help wishing Mrs. Charles had a little of your method with those children. They are quite different creatures with you, to be sure. In general, they are so spoiled. It is a pity you cannot put your sister in the way of managing them. They are as fine, healthy children as are ever seen. Poor little dears, without partiality, but Mrs. Charles knows no more how they should be treated. Bless me, how troublesome they are sometimes. I assure you, Miss Anne, it prevents my wishing to see them at our house so often as I otherwise should. I believe Mrs. Charles is not quite pleased with my not inviting them oftener, but you know it is very bad to have children with one that is to have it's very bad to have children with one that one is obliged to be checking every moment. Don't do this and don't do that, or that one can only keep in tolerable order by more cake than is good for them. She had this communication, moreover, from Mary. Mrs. Musgrove thinks all her servants so steady that it would be high treason to call it in question, but I am sure, without exaggeration, that her upper housemaid and laundry-maid, instead of being in their business, are gadding about in the village all day long. I meet them wherever I go, and I declare I never go twice into my nursery without seeing something of them. If Jemima were not the trustiest, steadiest creature in the world, it would be enough to spoil her, for she tells me they're always tempting her to take a walk with them. And on Mrs. Musgrove's side it was, I make a rule of never interfering with any of my daughter-in-law's concerns, for I know I would not do. But I shall tell you, Miss Anne, because you may be able to set things to rights, that I have no very good opinion of Mrs. Charles' nursery maid. I hear strange stories of her. She is always upon the gad, and from my own knowledge I can declare she is such a fine dressing lady that she is enough to ruin any servants she comes near. Mrs. Charles quite swears by her, I know, but I just give you this hint, that you may be upon the watch, because if you see anything amiss, you need not be afraid of mentioning it. Again, it was Mary's complaint that Mrs. Musgrove was very apt not to give her precedence that was due when they dined at the great house with other families, and she did not see any reason why she was to be considered so much at home as to lose her place. And one day, when Anne was walking with only the Miss Musgroves, one of them, after talking of rank, people of rank, and jealousy of rank, said, I have no scruple of observing to you how nonsensical some persons are about their place, because all the world knows how easy and indifferent you are about it. But I wish anybody could give Mary a hint that it would be a great deal better if she were not so very tenacious, especially if she would not be always putting herself forward to take place of mamma. Nobody doubts her right to have precedence of mamma, but it would be more becoming in her not to always be insisting on it. It is not that mamma cares about the least in the world, but I know it is taken notice of by many persons. I'm seeing a comment right now. Says Crusher says Charles could not persuade Anne to marry him. I think a lot of people would have been happier if Anne and Charles would have made a match of it. From what I can tell, people respect and like Anne much more than they respect and like Mary. But again, it was not to be. Anne was not going to say yes to just anybody. So, how was Anne to set all these matters to rights? She could do little more than listen patiently, soften every grievance, and excuse each to the other, give them all hints of the forbearance necessary between such near neighbors, and make those hints broadest which were meant for her sister's benefit. In all other respects, her visit began and proceeded very well. Her own spirits improved by change of place and subject, by being removed 3 miles from Kellynch. Mary's elements lessened by having a constant companion, and their daily intercourse with the other family, since there was neither superior affection, confidence, nor employment in the cottage to be interrupted by it, was rather an advantage. It was certainly carried nearly as far as possible, for they met every morning and hardly ever spent an evening asunder. But she believed they should not have done so well without the sight of Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove's respectable forms in the usual places, or without the talking, laughing, and singing of their daughters. She played a great deal better than either of the Miss Musgroves. She played the piano, but having no voice, no knowledge of the harp, and no fond parents to sit by and fancy themselves delighted, her performance was little thought of, only out of civility or to refresh the others, as she was well aware. She is musical. She's very gifted in the music, but because, first of all, she's in somebody else's house, so nobody's gonna request her to play for them. Like the parents, they're like, "Oh, my child, play me the tune, delight us with a tune and a song." So the other girls, they play the tune, they play the harp, they sing. Their parents love it when their children sing, of course, as happens. But nobody really cares for Anne or like requests Anne to play unless it's because they want to give the other performers a break. She knew that when she played, she was giving pleasure only to herself. But this was no new sensation. Excepting one short period in her life, she had never since the age of 14, never since the loss of her dear mother, known the happiness of being listened to, or encouraged by any just appreciation or real taste. In music, she had always used to feel alone in the world, and Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove's fond partiality for their own daughter's performance, and total indifference to any other person's, gave her more pleasure for their sakes than mortification for her own. The party at the great house was sometimes increased by other company. Their neighborhood was not large, but the Musgroves were visited by everybody, and had more dinner parties and more callers, more visitors by invitation and by chance than any other family. They were more completely popular. The girls were wild for dancing, and the evenings ended occasionally in an unpremeditated little ball. There was a family of cousins within a walk of Uppercross, in less affluent circumstances, who depended on the Musgroves for all their pleasures. They would come at any time, and help play at anything, or dance anywhere, and Anne, very much preferring the office of musician to a more active post, played country dances to them by the hour together, a kindness which always recommended her musical powers to the notice of Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove more than anything else, and often drew this compliment: "Well done, Miss Anne! Very well done indeed. Lord bless me, how those little fingers of yours fly about!" So passed the first 3 weeks. Michaelmas came, and now Anne's heart must be in Kellynch again. A beloved home made over to others, all the precious rooms and furniture, groves and prospects, beginning to own other eyes and other limbs. She could not think of much else on the 29th of September, and she had this sympathetic touch in the evening from Mary, who, on having occasion to note down the day of the month, exclaimed, "Dear me, is not this the day the Crofts were to come to Kellynch? I am glad I did not think of it before. How low it makes me." The Crofts took possession with true naval alertness and were to be visited. Mary deplored the necessity for herself. Nobody knew how much she would suffer. She should put it off as long as she could. But it was not easy till she had talked Charles into driving her over on an early day, and was in a very animated, comfortable state of imaginary agitation when she came back. Anne had very sincerely rejoiced in there being no means of her going. She wished, however, to see the Crofts, and was glad to be within when the visit was returned. They came. The master of the house was not at home, but the two sisters were together, and as it chanced that Mrs. Croft fell to the share of Anne, while the Admiral sat by Mary and made himself very agreeable by his good-humoured notice of her little boys, she was well able to watch for a likeness, and if it failed her in the features, to catch it in the voice, or in the turn of sentiment and expression. She's trying to see semblance of her old flame in his sister, Mrs. Croft. Mrs. Croft, though neither tall nor fat, had a squareness, a brightness, and vigor of form, which gave importance to her person. She had bright dark eyes, good teeth, and altogether an agreeable face. That's nice. That's a nice compliment. Next time they ask you, like, if you are good looking or whatever, or if somebody is good looking, tell them they have bright eyes, good teeth, and an agreeable face. Like, always be sure to mention the teeth, you guys. It's important. Back in the day, by the way, like way back in the day, when parents would arrange marriages for children, parents would be sure to tell the other party, like, oh yeah, my daughter, she has good breath, she has all her teeth are in place, she is a breedable age, good hips for childbearing. Yeah, so all her hair. So yeah, it's funny how Jane Austen you can still see some of those descriptors now, because again, good teeth we take teeth for granted nowadays, you guys. But back then, how many you had in your skull was a matter of great importance, because it wasn't likely that you still had all of them. Anyway, oh, that's why if you guys remember, in Pride and Prejudice, if you've read Pride and Prejudice, it's a great compliment when they say that Elizabeth's teeth are tolerable. Her teeth are tolerable. Well, anyway, continuing on. How do you say that in Spanish without sounding weird? Says Crusher. Yeah, I don't know. I can't come up with something right now except to translate it literally. She tiene ojos brillantes, dientes buenos, todos sus dientes, good teeth, buenos dientes, dientes buenos. I don't know. Anyway, continuing on. She had bright dark eyes, good teeth, and altogether an agreeable face, though her reddened and weather-beaten complexion, the consequence of her having been almost as much at sea as her husband, made her seem to have lived some years longer in the world than her real 38. Wow, 38! Wow. Please try not to think about why I'm wondering about 38 right now. 38. Her manners were open, easy, and decided, like one who had no distrust of herself and no doubts of what to do, without any approach to coarseness, however, or any want of good humor. Anne gave her credit, indeed, for feelings of great consideration toward herself in all that related to Kellynch, and it pleased her, especially as she had satisfied herself in the very first half-minute, in the instant even of introduction, that there was not the smallest symptom of any knowledge or suspicion on Mrs. Croft's side to give bias of any sort. She was quite easy on that head, and consequently full of strength and courage, till for a moment electrified by Mrs. Croft suddenly saying, "It was you, and not your sister, I find, that my brother had the pleasure of being acquainted with when he was in the country." Anne hoped she had outlived the age of blushing, but the age of emotion she certainly had not. So at 27, you don't find yourself easy to be blushing. I'm sorry, but I was 30 something and I still get blush. I still blush when I get embarrassed, okay? So Anne is stronger of character because yeah, I would have still been blushing. Don't worry, 38 is still young in my opinion, says Crusher. Yeah, it is still young. So you guys, I'm just shocked because in all of these adaptations of Persuasion, the Mrs. Croft is seen like a middle-aged lady, like old, like closer to her 50s or late 40s kind of deal, you know? And turns out that she's only 38. She's closer to my age than I thought. So I'm like, yo, is that how I look like? Like in my head, I'm still like in my, I don't know, my 20s, early 20s. But no, I'm in my 30s, you guys. So is that how, is that delusion? Are we deluded to think ourselves younger than we are? Anyway, that's a different question for another time. But anyway. Crusher says, but as soon as you reach 45, game over. Just kidding, just kidding. I don't know. I think it's something that happens, like our age just catches us by surprise. It really does. Anyway, continuing on. Like I really want to show you guys how Mrs. Croft looks like, and tell me if they did not age her up to be like really old. Hold on a second. Let me put the music while I look for the things. Sorry, you guys, this is very important for me. Okay, looking for the Mrs. Crofts. Here we go. So here are the Mrs. Crofts, okay? There's, okay, first one on the left, that's Mrs. Croft. She does not look 38. Or at least I don't think so. She looks like 40s. This is from, I think, the 1995 version. Then, so the whole first row is from the 1995 version. And the second row, who knows who this girl is? I don't know who this is. Who's this? I don't know. This, I don't know who that is. This person is. But this one is from the 2006 version. Ah, blast. This is from the 2006 version, which again does not look 38. You guys, does not look 38. So yeah, and then the next one. The other lady with the turban, that's actually Lady Russell from, I think, 1995 version, I believe. So anyway, I don't know. What do you guys think? 38? Does this look 38, you guys? It doesn't, right? It doesn't. Of course, the book says that she was older. She looked a little older. Persuasion movie when? Says Crusher. As soon as we finish the book, we will watch the movie. Akihana says, that definitely doesn't look 38, more like 48. Right. Yes, Tio. She was described as looking older than 38, but even her husband, the Admiral, he looks like an old man. So, like, it just kind of, like, gives that impression that they're, like, in their dotage, you know what I mean? Alright, let's finish this chapter, because I don't know, how long do we have? Let's see, we're on page 52. And, okay, we still have 4 pages to go. Let's finish this chapter, you guys. Okay. Yeah, my throat is giving me the business. It's really stupid allergies. All right. It was you and not your sister, I find, that my brother had the pleasure of being acquainted with when he was in this country. Anne hoped she had outlived the age of blushing, but the age of emotion she certainly had not. Perhaps you may not have heard that he is married, added Mrs. Croft. Ooh, he's married! Okay, never mind, end of story. She could not answer as she ought, and was happy to feel, when Mrs. Croft's next word explained to be Mr. Wentworth, of whom she spoke, that she had said nothing which might not do for either brother. She immediately felt how... So Mr. Wentworth is actually the brother, the parson. You guys remember she has two brothers, the parson and then the guy that Anne briefly became engaged to, who was in the Navy. So it's the parson, the other brother that's gotten married. She immediately felt how reasonable it was that Mrs. Croft should be thinking and speaking of Edward, and not of Frederick, and with shame at her own forgetfulness, applied herself to the knowledge of their former neighbour's present state with proper interest. The rest was all tranquillity, till, just as they were moving, she heard the Admiral say to Mary, "We're expecting a brother of Mrs. Croft's here soon. I dare say you know him by name." He was cut short by the eager attacks of the little boys, clinging to him like an old friend, and declaring he should not go, and being too much engrossed by proposals of carrying them away in his coat pocket, etc., to have another moment for finishing or recollecting what he had begun. Anne was left to persuade herself, as well as she could, that the same brother must still be in question. She could not, however, reach such a degree of certainty as not to be anxious to hear whether anything had been said on the subject at the other house, where the Crofts had been previously calling. So we get... Notice that one of her brothers is going to come visit, but still Anne does not know which of the brothers. The folks of Great House were to spend the evening of this day at the cottage, and it being now too late in the year for such visits to be made on foot, the coach was beginning to be listened for, when the youngest Miss Musgrove walked in. That she was coming to apologize, and that they should have to spend the evening by themselves, was the first black idea, and Mary was quite ready to be affronted, when Louisa made all right by saying that she came only on foot, to leave more room for the harp, which was bringing in the carriage. "And I will tell you our reason," she added, "and all about it. I am come on to give you notice that Papa and Mamma are out of spirits this evening, especially Mamma. She is thinking so much of poor Richard, and we agreed it would be best to have the harp, for it seems to amuse her more than the pianoforte. I will tell you why she is out of spirits. When the Crofts called this morning, they called here afterwards, did not they? They happened to say that her brother, Captain Wentworth, is just returned to England, or paid off or something, and is coming to see them almost directly. And most unluckily it came to Mamma's head when they were gone, that Wentworth, or something very like it, was the name of poor Richard's captain at one time. I do not know when or where, but a great while before he died, poor fellow. And upon looking over his letters and things, she found it was so, and is perfectly sure that this must be the very man. Our head is quite full of it, and of poor Richard. So we must all be as merry as we can, that she may not be dwelling upon such gloomy things." The real circumstances of this pathetic piece of family history were that the Musgroves had had the ill fortune of a very troublesome, hopeless son, and the good fortune to lose him before he had reached his 20th year, that he had been sent to sea because he was stupid and unmanageable on shore, that they had been very little cared for at any time by his family, though quite as much as he deserved, seldom heard of, and scarcely at all regretted, when the intelligence of his death abroad had worked its way to Uppercross 2 years before. He had, in fact, though his sisters were now doing all they could for him by calling him poor Richard, been nothing better than a thick-headed, unfeeling, unprofitable Dick Musgrove, who had never done anything to entitle himself to more than the abbreviation of his name, living or dead. So, He had earned nothing but the only thing he had done in his life was to earn his nickname Dick. I don't know if she intended this, but now it sounds hilarious, you guys. I'm sorry, but this guy lived the only good thing he did was live up to his nickname, that he was a Oh, are we doing a Poor Richard counter? Oh my goodness. All right. First it was Poor Mrs. Clay, now it's Poor Richard. I know. And I'm trying not to say Poor Anne, but really, come on, you guys. There has been... It has been necessary. All right. So, Dick Musgrove, okay, he had been several years at sea and had, in the course of those removals to which all midshipmen are liable, and especially such midshipmen as every captain wishes to get rid of, been 6 months on board Captain Frederick Wentworth's frigate, the Laconia. And from the Laconia he had, under the influence of his captain, written the only 2 letters which his father and mother had ever received from him during the whole of his absence. That is to say, the only 2 disinterested letters. All the rest had been mere applications for money. In each letter he had spoken well of his captain. But yet, so little were they in the habit of attending to such matters, so unobservant and incurious were they as to the names of names or ships, that it had made scarcely an impression at the time, and that Mrs. Musgrove should have been suddenly struck, this very day, with the recollection of the name of Wentworth, as connected with her son, seemed one of those extraordinary bursts of mind which do sometimes occur. She had gone to her letters and found it all as she supposed, and the reperusal of these letters, after so long an interval, her poor son gone forever, and all the strength of his faults forgotten, had affected her spirits exceedingly, and thrown her into greater grief for him than she had known on first hearing of his death. Mr. Musgrove was, in a lesser degree, affected likewise, and when they reached the cottage they were evidently in want, first, of being listened to anew on the subject, and afterwards of all the relief which cheerful companions could give. To hear them talking so much of Captain Wentworth, repeating his name so often, puzzling over past years, and at last ascertaining that it might, and it probably would, turn out the very same Captain Wentworth whom they recollected meeting once or twice after their coming back from Clifton, a very fine young man, but they could not say whether it was 7 or 8 years ago, was a new sort of trial to Anne's nerves. She found, however, that it was one to which she must inure herself, since he actually was expected in the country. She must teach herself to be insensible on such points. And not only did it appear that he was expected, and speedily, but the Musgroves, in their warm gratitude for the kindness he had shown poor Dick, and very high respect for his character, stamped as it was by poor Dick's having been 6 months under his care, and mentioning him in strong, though not perfectly well-spelt praise, as a fine dashing fellow, only too particular about the schoolmaster, were bent on introducing themselves and seeking his acquaintance as soon as they could hear of his arrival. The resolution of doing so helped to form the comfort of their evening. End of chapter. Okay, you guys. Next time when we do a next read-along, which will be on Wednesday, because Monday I have a bunch of stuff to do, you guys. So no read-along on Monday. We will get together on Wednesday. We will finally meet Wentworth. Captain Wentworth is coming to town, you guys, and Anne has to brace herself for it. Woo! It's going to be a doozy, you guys. Okay, so poor Richard counter 5, really? And poor Anne counter reached 6. Oh my goodness, all these poor nobles. Well, to their credit, they're not all nobles, they're gentry, so they're not quite nobles. But yeah. Hey, they have their little heart as well. So yeah, they have feelings too. Yes, Val Silver Tear says, at Crusher, there is already a movie. There are actually 3 adaptations, you guys, at least 3. There's one from 1995 with the actor Syrian Hines and some other lady, I forget her name. It's a very good one. Probably not my favorite, but it's a good one. It really is good. The second one is a 2006 adaptation by ITV, so it's from Britain. Very well, it's my favorite because it just has this kind of like atmospheric, like I can't describe it, you guys, you have to see it. Probably that's the one we'll be watching, but if not, we can watch the Netflix one. Yes, Netflix did a Persuasion and I want you guys to watch it with me. Maybe there was a lot of people that had a lot of opinions on the Persuasion when it came out, mostly because it was so off, like it just steered away from it. It was just not Anne, you guys. Like a lot of the Anne that we get to know in this book, it's the characters changed a little, like just not very true to the book. Okay, it's still very pretty one though. It was pretty. I love the soundtrack. In fact, the soundtrack appeared in my Spotify Wrapped at some point because I listened to it so much. Yeah. Teal says, Nobles, happy Bastille Day. Oh no, Teal. Yeah, I mean, when will Magpie host a watch party on her server? I will host it on the week that we finish the read along, and like I think I'm gonna do it again. I will open the server temporarily for people who are joining these read-alongs so we can watch the movie together. I think you guys will enjoy it. I enjoyed when we watched Jane Eyre series. Yes, we sat through almost 4 hours worth of Jane Eyre, and it'll be fun. It'll be amazing. I hope you guys enjoy it. 2006 is awesome, right, Little Butterfly? I'm glad you agree with me because I know we did not agree on the Jane Eyre. Little Butterfly, by the way, I know you don't like Jane Eyre, but if you have watched more than one adaptation, let me know which one's the one that you like the most. Red Tempest says, which is the best one? Again, if you want to go to faithfulness, like faithfulness, probably 1995 version with Syrian Hines. It really is the most faithful to the book. And it's nice. It really is nice. 2006 is the best one in my opinion. I loved it. I just, again, why do they... Okay, I have thoughts about it. There's just one thing that I'm like, no, they messed up the movie. Why? So I'm not going to say what it is. You guys will know when we watch it. When we watch it, you guys will know. We will watch 2006 version for sure. And we will see how many times we say poor Anne. Okay, Akiana says, sadly, that's what we often get in recent adaptations, production always changing things to suit their woke propagandas. I don't know about woke propaganda in this one. It's more like... what can I say? There's so many YouTube essays. Trust me, when the movie came out, the YouTube knows what I like to watch, and it pushed on me all of these like critiques on the Netflix adaptation. But it didn't have anything to do with wokeness or whatever. That my main gripe. It has to do something on the mischaracterization, the misinterpretation of what makes Anne such a strong character. Because for now, like the way I see it now, you guys, in order to be seen, in order to be heard, in order to be respected, you have to act as a woman. Sometimes people tell you in order to be, you have to go and compete with the men. And that sucks because that's not... Like they kind of made Anne, like all the strengths that Anne has in this book, they said like, no, she's too soft, too weak. So they totally remade her character. And that's my issue. Like they didn't believe in the strength of her inner strength to carry out the story. They said like, this has to be adapted for a modern audience who the modern audience values more talkative, more people that put themselves forward. The modern audience will sympathize with a female character who is strong and bold and who will be mouthy, who will be witty. And there's a place for those kind of heroines. But not every woman has to conform. Not everybody has to conform to that. Not every woman, not every person has to conform to that standard. Like, it's the same issue. Like, everybody says that in order to be successful in life, you have to be like an extrovert. You have to like do these things, like become a totally different person. No. There's strength in introverts. There's strength in being careful of what you say, being wise. There's strength in, thinking things through rather than letting your mouth loose or having no filter. So it's just those kind of things. Like, it wasn't necessary for them to have done that to her in the Netflix adaptation. So if we can watch that one too, just kind of to compare. I kind of want to watch it so you guys can see it. Anyway, let's see. Red Tempest says, I missed the first 2 episodes of Jane Eyre. Well, I put in the chat. I put the link to where you can watch them. Unfortunately, when we watched the Jane Eyre one, they were like, we watched them stream from YouTube. Not YouTube, from Amazon Prime. That's where I watch it. But the ones in Amazon Prime, they're edited. So like, they cut off some important scenes. It was really sad. Not from the book, but from the actual original. The first time that the 2006 adaptation of Jane Eyre came out on TV, every episode was an hour long. And every single episode now, when you watch it on Prime, it's like 50 minutes long. So they cut off minutes worth of the adaptation. So in the voice chat on that day, I posted the link so you can watch the unedited version with all of the conversations that they cut off, so you can better appreciate it. Red Tempest says, when we hear Magpie yell no during the movie, that is when we find out what's wrong with it. Yes. All right, little butterfly, I will be very, very expectantly waiting for your opinion on which Jane adaptations you think are better or worse. so many instances of me saying the trademarked poor Anne, but it's just every heroine. You guys, have you guys noticed a trend in these read-alongs? Every book features a heroine who starts at a very depressing place in her life. We had Valancy, who had turned 29. She was older than Anne, who had turned 29, was single, was about to die. We had Jane Eyre, who was an orphan, who was left out at a charity institution. Now we have Anne, who is nobody cares about. Like, her family doesn't give a hoot about her opinion, and she had a fling in her youth. And now she regrets it, and she's gonna regret it even more when and if she meets. Well, she will. She's gonna have even more feelings about this past romantic entanglement once she meets Frederick Wentworth, or Captain Wentworth, which she will in the next read along, hopefully. Bro, there was one Jane adaptation where Bertha yells out Spanish profanity. It was hilarious. It was a 2006 one. That's the one where we watched. Yes, he called her. she yelled out the P word in Spanish. It was that one. We watched it together, and I think there was a bunch of people who laughed. And Red Tempest says, if this was a drinking game, I would have passed out by now. Yes, that's why I did not make it a drinking game. Like, if you want to drink water, drink some water. Drink the water. The underdog archetype. Yes. So, again, you guys can tell that this is the type of books I read in my days off. Or I used to read, because I don't have time to read nowadays. But anyway, you guys, I have had so much fun. Again, unfortunately, Monday is a packed day for me, and I will be super busy, especially since Monday is going to be the chit chat recording. So if you are a member of my Discord server, you're a member, if you're a member and support me monthly, you can join in tomorrow. I'll be hanging out with a whole bunch of us, hopefully a whole bunch of us. We will be talking about the Blue Castle. We will talk about Barney, Valency. We will talk about Sicily. We will talk about the society they were in, the times. We'll talk about Ellen Montgomery's life and what affected, and just things about that I came into, like, just things that in her life that may have or may not have influenced the way she wrote this book. I don't know. We'll talk. I hope it's something interesting, and eventually I will upload the edited version, not the full length, because I'm pretty sure this is going to run for more than 2 hours, hopefully. But then the edited will be definitely less than 2 hours, maybe 1.5. Here's hoping. But that will be for, like, I don't know, in a month or so. And again, Monday will be, again, Mind Day. So I hope you also join me on Tuesday. I believe it's going to be Tuesday morning. Though, like I said, I just got a last minute notice that they're going to come into my apartments. They're doing like some kind of inspection on some electricals and I don't know what the heck. So it's going to be crazy. I wanted to do it. I actually needed to do it in the morning for Europe Gang, but it turns out that I may have to go back to the afternoon. All right, so we'll see. Keep your eye out on the announcement for the lives, just for the chit chat. Yeah, for the bookworm chit chat. Yes. All right, everybody. I hope that you guys enjoyed this read along. I will see you on Wednesday. If you don't join me tomorrow for the Blue Castle Chit Chat recording. And until then, you guys, hit like, share, listen to this as many times as you want. I don't know, it's just good to have other people check out our little craziness going on here. Until then, you guys, have a good one. Don't leave all your chores to poor Anne, please. Do your chores. Take care.